Everybody, thanks for watching. Now, this whole flat earth thing is something that, a lot of people have been asking me questions about. What's up with flat earth? Is it true? What's going on with it? Now, I tackled this whole flat earth thing about 8 years ago. And I started really digging into it because I was into World War II era and I was studying World War II hard, and I came across Admiral Byrd. And I'll get into Admiral Byrd later in the video. Now, the whole thing with flat earth is, a lot of this stuff fits. A lot of the information fits, it works, but there is a lot of things that, that don't work, that don't fit. And I got to give a shout out to everybody who has put out a video on flat earth, because the information is so mind blowing. And, once you start digging into it, it'll leave you, stuck, pondering for days. I mean, the implications it's amazing. But, since there is so many things that fit with the flat earth theory and so many things that go against it, it leads you to come up with alternative conclusions. And, that's basically what we're going to do in this video. I'm going to go through, flat earth theory. I'll give you my conclusion and I'll give you others, other people's conclusions as well. But it's something that you cannot ignore. You can't simply say these people are crazy. You have to really give the information a shot because it works in a lot of cases. And, you're going to see that in this video. Now, the whole reason why the flat earth theory gets a lot of, criticism and, people don't want to cut it no slack is because some of these people who put out the information are, kind of weirdos. And, they go so far south with it and they try to pass the whole thing off as, 100% proven fact. And that's something that you cannot do. It's a theory. Everything we're speaking about, it's a theory. It has not been proven. There's no way, we're going to know. So the people who try to pass this off as, fact, proof, as a proven thing, that's when it goes into that whole area of, this person is crazy. They don't know what they're talking about. And people normally discount, all of the information, or they don't go any further with the information because somebody in the beginning of their presentation says something like, God and flat earth and this is true and this is all real, instead of just sticking with the facts and saying that, this is a theory and this is the information I've come across. And that's something that you have to be careful with when you get into, any subject. You have to show what is proven fact. You can't speculate on every single thing and just say, because this makes sense, everything makes sense. And this is the reason why not enough people have jumped into flat earth and given it a chance, because you got too many weirdos out there who is trying to pass this off as 100% proven fact. And it's not, it's a theory. Everything is a theory. It's all, I'm not going to say hypothetical, per se. I'm going to say theory because, like I said, a lot of it makes sense. Now, first thing we need to do is take a look at this. We have all seen this image before. We have all seen video of the Earth. Now, the whole thing is we have never seen live video of Earth, from a wide shot, a wide angle. I'm talking about the astronauts, backed up far away from the planet, where they show us a wide shot of the entire planet. We have never seen that before. We have never seen them, take the camera and pan 180 or 360 degrees to show us what's behind the camera. We've never seen any shots to that effect at all. So, anybody who studies flat earth knows about this. So the thing is this, we know that there is no real pictures, no solid shots of the planet. The whole thing is the pictures of the Earth that we have are all composites. They're all composite shots that have been pieced together by NASA, and enhanced. And NASA actually admits this on their website. Take a look. It says enhancements by Robert Simmons, ocean color, compositing, 3D globes, animation. This spectacular blue marble image is the most detailed true color image of the entire Earth to date. Using a collection of satellite-based observations, scientists and visualizers stitched together months of observations of the land surface, oceans, sea ice, and clouds into a seamless true color mosaic of every square kilometer of our planet. These images are freely available to educators, scientists, museums, and publics. I'm not going to read the whole entire thing. You can pause it and read the rest for yourself. But The whole thing is this. It's a composite shot that they enhance. Now, the whole thing is you would think, why? Anybody who wants to take a picture of something, you stand back, you take a shot. I mean, that's the picture. If you have a true picture of the planet, what is all this? What is all this stuff that you need to form one solid shot of our planet? That whole thing is suspect right there. Now, some people believe that, of course, they cannot take a picture of the Earth because it's flat. But you have other people who believe that there is a dome over flat Earth. Now, that's something I'm going to get into later as well. Now, as I said, there are a lot of things that support the flat Earth theory. One of those things is the horizon. No matter how high up you go, when you're in a building, you could be on the 20th, 30th, 40th floor. When you look out the window, you see a straight horizon. Everything is straight. Everything looks flat. You don't see any curvature at all. And, that's obvious, of course, because we would build, a building on a flat surface. But if you're looking out at the sea level, at the water or the oceans, you should see a curvature. And we don't see one. You still see a flat, straight horizon. So if the Earth was curved, any ship that's traveling at the highest peak of the horizon line, every 6 miles that ship travels, it should dip 6 feet. And it should dip until the ship is no longer straight, until it's slanted and following the curvature of the Earth. But we don't see that. It stays straight. You can always see a straight horizon, and there is no curvature. There is no evidence of a curvature. You can see everything straight. Now, I was in the Navy for years, and I've been out to sea for months at a time, and I've never seen a curvature. I've never seen a dip. I never felt a dip. And it's something that you definitely have to look at as suspect, and it definitely gives validity to the whole flat Earth theory. Now, and of course, another thing is lighthouses. You got to think about that. Most lighthouses can be seen from at least 42 miles away, depending on how high above sea level they are built. But if the Earth is round, it would be impossible for you to see a lighthouse from 42 miles away or from further because of the curvature. If you're coming up over the horizon towards a lighthouse, the light will be obscure. You won't be able to see it because, of course, the water would block it. But that's not the case. You can see straight out. Anybody who has been up in a lighthouse, you can go to the top. You can look straight out at the horizon. You can see a straight, flat surface. There's nothing obscuring your vision. You can see as far as your eyes will allow you. When you look north, south, east, or west, it's completely flat, no curvature at all. The same thing is when you get into a plane. Anybody who has flown before, when the plane takes off, it takes off on a slant and it eventually straightens out. Now, if a plane takes off from here, if the Earth is round, it will have to continue on this slant, for miles before it straightens out. If it doesn't, it will eventually, crash. It will crash into the water or, to the ground because of the curvature. Now, you would think that once the plane takes off, because of the curvature, it would continue for a long time on this slant before it straightens out. But anybody who has flown knows once you take off, you're on that slant for probably 2, 3, maybe 4 minutes before the plane straightens out. If the Earth was round, that would be impossible because it would have to follow the curvature. Now, this is the map that flat earthers use. This is how they believe the continents are actually set up in relation to the planet. They believe that it's flat and this is what it looks like. And the map that we have been using for years is fraudulent. When you look at the UN logo, it looks exactly like the flat Earth map. And this is one of the reasons why they believe that it's true. Now, me personally, I honestly believe in the flat Earth map because I can tell you from experience. Now, I'm not actually saying I believe that the Earth is flat. I'm saying that I believe in this map because from experience, I can tell you when I flew here just recently from Sweden, we came in from the north of Canada. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to do this video, because I was like, it made me think. I told you 8 years ago, this stuff was stuck in my head, but I've never been to Sweden, before, this time, these years I've been over there. But when I came in from Sweden, we came in from Canada. Now, the pilot actually noted that. And that's one of the things that, kept me looking. And I was like, why are we coming in from Canada, from the north of Canada? When you look at a map, you would think that, direct route, and that's the quickest way to get from A to B is a straight line. But when you look at the direct route, you would think that we would follow, this right here, this model, and go straight into JFK. And that's what I flew into. I flew into New York to JFK. But we came in from the north of Canada, and that just it messed with my head the whole trip. Now, most, big planes, passenger planes, have the screens on the back of the seats. And they'll show you the route from when you took off to where you land. And you can see the map. They have the GPS up there, and you can see the whole route that you travel. So I paid attention to this route. And sure enough, we came in from Canada. And I was like, well, wait a minute. That's weird. Why would we come in from Canada, from the north, to get into New York, to get into JFK? So, that was suspect. The same thing when I flew from Dubai to Thailand, and that made me recall that whole flight as well. I remember when we traveled from Dubai, and I remember expecting to see a lot of water. When you look at it on the map, again, you would think that straight shot from Dubai to Bangkok, Thailand, and you would think you would fly over a lot of water, fly completely over India, and before you get to Thailand. But we flew over so much land. It was daytime, as you can see in the pictures, that we flew over land most of the whole trip. And I noticed that because I had a window seat, and it was like, where's the water? And it was the one instance when we flew over the Persian Gulf that we had, you could see the water, but from then on, it was nothing but land. And then I noticed on the GPS that we was flying over Tibet. And I'm like, what the hell? How are we flying over Tibet? That was weird. And we end up, landing into Bangkok. But after that flight, the whole emotions of the whole flat earth thing, all of the information started coming back. And I was like, I got to put a video out on flat earth and start looking into it a little bit more because, it was suspect. But I definitely believe in that map. And I definitely believe that this is the way that the continents are actually structured. You got to remember, for thousands of years, people believed that the earth was flat. It wasn't until the 1500s when, the whole round earth thing came out. Now, and of course, just because a plane travels in a weird direction or takes a weird route doesn't mean that the earth is flat. It doesn't mean that this map is correct. But it does give validity to the flat earth argument. And that's what this whole thing is about. Taking the information, taking the facts, and comparing it to the flat earth theory and seeing what fits. And this is something that is definitely suspect because you would think with the cost of jet fuel that they would want to take, a direct shot or a direct route to a destination. And anybody who studies this whole flat earth theory, they know about the multiple connecting flights. Once you start going south of Europe or traveling from South America, it's a lot of connecting flights. And it's like, why all of these connecting flights when the quickest direction is a straight shot? Now, there's a lot of reasons why that could be, but it is highly suspect. Now, another thing that I always found weird when I was little was, the oceans. And when you look at a globe, you see all that blue. And I used to always ask that question every time. How is it that the water doesn't, fall? Or how is the water staying with the planet? It sounds absurd now, but, it's a legitimate question when you look at it. It's like, how is the water, staying with the planet? And they tell us gravity. Gravity flows towards the center of the earth, and the earth being round, no matter where you stand at, whatever way gravity is flowing is down. So since gravity is flowing towards the center, no matter where you stand at on the planet, that direction is going to be down. The center of the earth will be down. It makes sense. It sounds all well and good, but you would think that if that's true, if I was to, take this cup and, scoop out some ocean water, right? And, I have water. Now, if I turn this cup upside down, according to flat earth, it should stay in the cup because of gravity. But, that's not the case. No water falls out. I mean, water should fall, but that's not what they're telling us with the whole flat earth theory. You would expect water to be all over the place, but it's not. In my case, this is a thermal cup, so that's why no water didn't come out. It's only on the outside, not in the inside. I drank it all. But you would expect the water to fall all over the place, but we don't see that. Doesn't make sense. It's a weird thing. And they just tell us anything. They tell us anything and, we accept it. It makes sense. That's something to me that never made sense. It's just something that, I've done experiments on. I've looked at the data and the research, and I can never wrap my head around it. It sounds correct, but do we really know? We don't really know how this stuff works. It's just another thing that gives, validity to the whole flat earth thing. And about the earth spinning, around and around, that whole thing was basically destroyed. That whole theory was destroyed if you accept the whole Airy's failure experiment. Take a look.
If a telescope is pointing at a star and both are stationary, then obviously the light comes straight into the telescope. In 1729, Bradley found that he had to tip his telescope forward very slightly to get a star in the center of his telescope. It was assumed that this was due to the motion of the Earth around the Sun. Let us assume that the telescope was moving at 5 miles an hour and had to be tipped 5 degrees. This 5-degree tipping, however, could equally be caused by the ether moving at 5 miles an hour, carrying the stars around the Earth. As we see here, the light would be coming in at the same angle, and the telescope would still have to be tipped 5 degrees. So tipping the telescope does not tell us whether it is the starlight moving or the telescope moving. However, there is a simple experiment that can determine whether it was the Earth that was moving or the ether and starlight. All that you had to do was record the tipping required for any particular star, then fill the telescope with water, which greatly slows down the speed of light in the telescope. So here is the moving telescope filled with water, tipped at 5 degrees, and you can see that the starlight does not now reach the eyepiece at the bottom. This is because the starlight moves much more slowly when passing through water. However, if the telescope is tipped further, say 10 degrees, then the starlight will then be visible again in the eyepiece. It has to be tipped further because the light is now slower when in the telescope. But if the starlight is going past the telescope at 5 miles an hour, then when it is filled with water, no further tipping is needed because the light is coming in at 5 degrees anyway. The starlight stays on the same path but is only travelling slower in the water. To recap, if it is the telescope that is moving, then when it is filled with water, it has to be tipped further to see the star. If the telescope is stationary and the starlight drifting past us, then it does not have to be tipped further. In 1871, George Biddle Airy, the Astronomer Royal, performed this experiment. This is a copy from his original report. You can see that the two readings are virtually identical. If it had been the telescope that was moving, Airy expected a figure of 30 seconds of arc. In fact, he only managed to read 0.8 seconds of arc difference. Bradley first discovered stellar aberration, and it is interesting that in his report, Airy mentions that it was now about 100 seconds of arc, and that it was still slowly diminishing. This indicates that the speed of light was still decreasing in measurable amounts when Airy performed his experiment in 1871. The result of Airy's experiment, known as Airy's failure, was that the telescope does not have to be tipped further. This proved that it was the incoming light that was moving past a stationary telescope fixed to the stationary Earth. What is interesting in his very brief report of only 4 pages is that not once did he refer to the astonishing results that the experiment proved, that the Earth was stationary.
So again, it's science. The experiment looks all well and good. It sounds, feasible. It sounds like it could be correct. But again, this is a theory. It's something that is tested by scientists. We can't believe every single thing that these people tell us. But he is basically saying that the Earth is not spinning. They've done experiments. It makes sense. It's another thing that goes towards the validity of flat Earth. Now, of course, as I said, there are things that go against it. We're going to get into that as well. But it's just another thing that you have to look at. And you have to examine these things. We can't just, throw them aside and say, that's crazy. Because we have been told a lot of things that we have found to be not true. This could possibly be another thing, but it's something you need to take into consideration as giving validity to the whole flat Earth theory. So we have basically the Earth not spinning. We have a straight horizon line. We can't see no curvature of the Earth. We have a map that contradicts the map that we grew up with. We have all these things that basically goes towards the validity of flat Earth. Also, when you look at the pictures of the planet, you always see that black, pitch black background. You never see anything behind the Earth. The Earth is either obscured by darkness, the background is blackened out, and we get that shot. The Earth is lit up by the blue hue. But the whole thing is, if the sun is, behind the camera and facing the planet, it should light up everything. If the sun is as big as they say it is, you should be able to see what's, behind the planet. There are supposedly billions of stars out there. You don't see no stars. You don't see nothing behind the planet being lit up. And you're going to find out why later, and it's going to make a lot of sense. But I mean, this is what they give us, and we don't see nothing behind it. You would think. Remember, they tell us the Earth is spinning hundreds of miles an hour, right? And it's orbiting the sun. And so you're talking about the Earth spinning, and everything is spinning. So you would think when you see the videos, why can't we see this rotation? Why can't we see, or why doesn't it seem like the astronauts are spinning as well? What's going on? There's a lot of questions that are raised when you start examining the photos and the videos from NASA. And we know NASA stands for never a straight answer because they never give us one. They always tell us a bunch of nerdy science things to confuse people. And it leaves you as a researcher. It makes you, you got to be honest, and you got to start getting a dictionary and understanding the words and terms that they use so you can, figure out the truth. And this is what I had to do years ago, and I started digging into recently. But, it's another thing that gives validity to the flat Earth theory. It's another question that goes towards the whole thing, and we got to examine this stuff, which is why I said earlier, I can't, shun these people for putting out the videos and saying what they've said, because it makes a lot of sense. It gives a lot of validity to their argument. But as we go on, and as I show you some things in this video, you're going to be able to determine whether or not you agree or disagree. And as I said, I'll tell you what I think is going on and what's up. So now this brings me to the whole dome theory. Now, people believe that, the flat Earth model that I showed you is covered by a dome. And the reason why, NASA can't get a complete shot of the Earth is because they can't get back far enough to take a picture, because of the dome. So, this is easy. If you try to take a picture of a car up close, you're not going to be able to get the whole car in the shot because you're too close. But if you back up far enough, you can get, a wide shot or a full shot of the car. You can get the whole, car in the frame. But because of this dome blocking them, NASA can't go back far enough to get a complete shot. So they have to give us a composite shot from different parts of the planet. It makes sense, but it doesn't explain meteors. We have video footage of meteors. Remember the meteor in Russia that hit not too long ago? And there has been, documented cases of meteors going back hundreds of years, a lot of amateur video of meteors falling. Doesn't explain it. It also doesn't explain the sun and the moon. So if it's a dome, that basically means that the sun and the moon would have to be, in here with us or under the dome, because you can actually feel the sun rays. You can feel it. You look up at the sun, it's hot on your face. We have summer, we have winter. So the whole dome theory, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't really fit. Now, people have a lot of different ideas of what they think the dome is made of. Some people think it's just some kind of invisible barrier that we can see through. Some people think it's a structure and what we're seeing is some kind of hologram. It's a lot of weird things people think it is, but as I said, I don't believe in it, and it doesn't really fit, and I think it's being purposely put out there. But it does call into question the whole, moon landing. Most people believe that we never went to the moon. The whole thing was faked. Now, NASA has this chronological catalog of lunar events or lunar activity. For hundreds of years, going back to about, the 13th century, you have a bunch of different astrologers and a lot of prominent people reporting lunar activity, saying they seen things coming from the moon, they seen light coming from the moon, and, things like that. People have reported smoke coming from the moon. So all of these things have been, cataloged and reported for hundreds of years. We're talking about a lot of intelligent people, prominent people who have reported these things. And NASA has a catalog that they had for a long time where they was compiling all of this information. Now, we also can't discount the many ancient civilizations that basically documented, lunar activity. And this is long before the telescope was invented. But of course, you don't need a telescope to see if, smoke or light or thunder is coming from the moon. But a lot of ancient civilizations documented lunar activity. We can't discount that. But getting into the whole moon landing, 1969. Now, when they had supposedly returned, when Apollo 11 came back from the moon, when they supposed to have came back from the moon, a man named Byrd, he talked about, the astronauts using a different frequency to talk to mission control. They were speaking with somebody. And they had basically said that they could see structures and, ships on the moon, during landing. And, this whole thing was televised. Everybody know the moon landing was one of the most watched events, in human history. People from all over the world was watching this. So, it makes sense to use a different frequency. So, he talked about this and he put the information out there with somebody else who was an astronaut as well as Byrd, who put a book out on this. But when you start doing the research on the whole moon landing, you're going to come up with two stories besides the official story. Now, I have done this research for years. I've read most of the documents, a lot of the official reports, and I was really into the whole thing, years ago. Now, two stories you're going to come out with. And one of them is believable, one of them is not. The first story is this. The first story is they went to the moon. They actually went there. They landed. But when they landed, they was contacted by aliens who told them to get off of the moon and to never return to the moon. And the whole reason why they had to fake the moon landing is because the footage, all the video footage that they had of the moon was unusable. They couldn't use it because it showed the structures, it showed the ships, and it showed a lot of things that they didn't want the American public or the world to see. So they had to fake the whole moon landing. It was fake, on a sound stage, and the whole thing was fake. But they had to do it because they couldn't use the footage, but they actually went to the moon. And that's the one I do not believe personally based upon, the proof, the information. Now, the second story is by 1969, they already knew damn well who and what was on the moon. They knew what was going on the moon, and they had no intentions of going to the moon at all. Not because of a dome, but because we simply couldn't get to the moon in 1969. We couldn't get through, the radiation field, the whole Van Allen radiation belts. We couldn't get through it. We didn't have the technology to get through it, and they knew it in 1969. Now, when that whole report got out that I mentioned before about the lunar activity, they either leaked it, which I think they did, but it got out, and a lot of people was curious about the moon. What they did was see an opportunity to scam the American people out of billions of dollars. You know, NASA seen an opportunity, took advantage of it. They said, okay, people are curious about the moon. You know, we made people curious about the moon. Let's fake this whole thing so we can scam the people out of billions of dollars and say that we went to the moon. Now, the whole thing was a hoax. They never went there. They knew they can go, you know, a few hundred feet into the atmosphere, but not as far, not even halfway to the moon, because we couldn't get through the radiation, and they knew it. So they scammed the American people out of billions of dollars for NASA, for the whole space program, and they faked the whole thing, you know, in front of the entire world. Now, anybody who is not familiar with this whole thing or has not done the research on the moon landing, it has been proven. The whole thing has been proven fake. I mean, they literally prove that they faked the whole thing, as I'm going to show you in a second. And this is one of the reasons why I do these videos and why I put out information. And I got a lot of respect for other people who do as well, because without us, without, you know, people like you putting out this information, we would be so lost. We wouldn't know, you know, 10% of the information we know now. But the thing is, if they simply release this information I'm about to show you, this video I'm about to show you, if they just released it to the public, it would show everybody how crooked our government is, how crooked NASA is, but also the lengths, you know, how much they are willing to do or go through to scam the American people out of money and to trick us. It will show you how crazy these people are and what they are willing to do to scam the American people. Now, it has been proven. You take a look and you judge for yourself. You know, take a look.
With very near and hot studio lighting, that left one hot astronaut inside. Assuming that it was the astronauts inside after all, their faces were always covered. The necessary mammoth amounts of air conditioning were probably responsible for the air current. Here the editor cuts to a still shot of the flag, just as the effect becomes noticeable. Here it is unchecked. This rare clip, attained decades ago, was never re-released, with the inevitable increase in experience and scrutiny. To demonstrate 1/6 gravity, a bouncy, floaty feel to the astronauts' movements would be similarly achieved with relative simplicity. Slow motion. You are viewing the scenes as they aired more than 30 years ago. Now let's look at them with the speed doubled. It becomes discernible that they are, in fact, in Earth's gravity, and are no more leaving the ground than they would on Earth. It is clear from these rarely seen color television pictures that the crew of Apollo 11 had a high-resolution color video camera with them on their mission, yet the only pictures broadcast live from the moon's surface were these from a low-definition black and white camera. In fact, the networks complained because in addition to this, they were forced to shoot the images, second generation, off of a projection TV of the technology of 30 years ago, and were not even allowed to take a direct feed, which further degraded the quality and clarity of the images. Perhaps this was precisely what NASA and the federal government had in mind. After all, it was a first, regardless of where they were. Better to open up their debut mission with fuzzy pictures and numerous blackouts, rather than show too much revealing detail of a false scene that was yet unproven. And finally, the element that seals their fate. All the footage of Apollo 11 requested from NASA over a 5-year period, one gem was discovered just before the completion of this documentary. An old reel received by mistake. It contains the raw or unedited footage of the crew of Apollo 11, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin Jr. and Neil Armstrong, staging part of their mission for nearly an hour in living color, with exceptionally clear behind-the-scenes audio of conversations discussing the techniques used to achieve a disingenuous picture depicting the Earth at a distance, in order to falsely demonstrate their far journey from it and their ability to survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts. It cannot be misconstrued that this staging was done for some other reason, for the reel itself is slated and dated July 18th, 19th and 20th, 1969, the very days of the mission when they were said to be approaching and achieving lunar orbit. Furthermore, it is apparent they are in genuine zero gravity of the actual spacecraft, necessary to convince the mass media of their authenticity, just not any further than Earth orbit, as you will see. In this never-before-seen or heard footage, not only is the radio conversation between the astronauts and Houston Control audible, there is a taking place between the crew and a third confidential party, prompting the astronauts with what to say, when to speak, and how to effectively manipulate the camera to achieve the desired misleading effect. NASA claims that the Houston transmissions were the only ones taking place with the astronauts. Listen now as Houston Control initiates a conversation with the crew, only to find them too preoccupied with the behind-the-scenes trickery to respond. Moments pass and the oversight is picked up on by the clandestine third party, who quickly prompts them with talk. Immediately, Neil Armstrong speaks.
Hello, Apollo 11. Houston, Goldstone says that the TV looks great. Over. Okay, Roger. We're mapping in on Earth.
Again, the illusion they are attempting to create is the Earth at a distance to demonstrate their far journey from it and their ability to survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts. Understand, too, that only about 20 seconds of this raw footage was ever broadcast to the public, and these conversations discussing their deception were believed to be private, until now. Here they discuss that these television transmissions were in fact not broadcast live as everyone believed. They were first screened and edited for playback later.
Roger, Neil, we just wanted a narrative such that we can, when we get the playback, we can sort of correlate what we're so much.
Here they discuss the fact that they have turned out the lights and have blocked out sunlight from entering the spacecraft through the other windows, as to not cause any reflected light to fall onto the spacecraft's wall in the foreground.
Okay, very good. Well, we shut out the sun coming in some of the other windows into the spacecraft, so it's looking through a number one window, and there isn't any reflected light.
The reason this was done is so that the truth of the matter would not be revealed. It is this. Though the federal government would have you believe that this is a view of Earth from a distance out of the spacecraft's window as it nears the moon, it is not. What they have ingeniously done is placed the camera at the back of the spacecraft and centered the lens on a circular window in the foreground, outside of which it is completely filled with the Earth in low orbit. The circumference of the window then appears to be the diameter of the Earth at a distance, with the darkened walls of the spacecraft appearing to be the blackness of space around it. That is why they wanted the interior dark and blocked out the sun from any other windows. Here you can see the extruded window, probably 2 inches thick at the bottom. This is because the Earth's shine is coming in at a downward angle. It also causes the Earth to appear to be an irregularly shaped circle, for you are seeing the outside of the window at the top, which together form 2 different sized halves of a circle. Subsequently, this take was never used. As they perfected the shot, a crescent-shaped piece of black material was inset slightly into the window to create the illusion of the Earth's terminator line dividing night and day. It is uncannily convincing. During this segment, intended to be edited and played back later for the worldwide television audience, dated July 18th, 1969, Neil Armstrong condemns himself as he states that he is 130,000 miles out, or halfway to the moon, as the NASA flight log also states on this date, when he is in reality in low Earth orbit of a few hundred miles.
Roger, Houston, Apollo 11. Calling in from about 130,000 miles out.
Here, during another segment, also intended to air after review, Neil Armstrong falsely explains to the viewers how the shot is attained by putting the camera's lens to the window's glass, as it would have to be if they were the claimed distance away from the Earth.
We only have one window that has a view of the Earth, and it's filled up with the TV camera.
If the window was completely filled up with a TV camera, as he stated, then an astronaut's arm would not be able to get between the camera and the window, as it obviously does here in this outtake.
South America becomes invisible just off beyond the Terminator or inside the shadow.
You can also notice how the astronaut operating the camera reacted to the mistake by attempting to pan away from it.
Blue cast, see white bands of major cloud formations across the Earth. And
This is a segment that they believed wasn't even being recorded, much less suitable for broadcast, for the lens was being zoomed out and the scene was being changed to that of an interior of the astronauts at work, and apparently the stop button popped back up on the recorder without notice. Here is the diffused work light that they used to see camera controls, but not throw light onto the spacecraft's wall. Here they remove part of the crescent insert. Finally, the iris is opened up to see the real location of the camera and the very bright and near Earth out the window. Here is the slate for the 19th of July, and the same shot of trickery on the 19th of July, and then the 20th, and the same misleading shot on the 20th. Later that evening, they were said to be walking on the moon. How can this be when they were in Earth orbit only 9 hours earlier, and the moon is some 3 days' journey away? Furthermore, if they genuinely went to the moon, why would they be faking any part of it? Why this trickery with the window? By faking being halfway to the moon, it becomes apparent that they did so because they could not even go halfway. It thus success was the lethal radiation of the Van Allen radiation belts. Since the same equipment was used on the subsequent missions in the 40 months that followed, none of them could have gone to the moon. They only increased their proficiency at staging them. When some TV viewers of the second manned mission to the moon telephoned the networks complaining that reruns of I Love Lucy were being interrupted, it became clear that for the taxpayers, once was enough. But it wasn't enough for the government and contractors. Billions of dollars of pure profit went with each return. How coincidental that the following mission would have the element of life and death jeopardy. Apollo 13. Now the public would take going to the moon more seriously and be reconnected with the drama. We now realize that perhaps the reason Neil Armstrong has never given an on-camera interview is because he doesn't want to lie anymore. What threats may have been made upon such honorable men or their families to possess their reluctant cooperation and later ill feelings towards perpetuating this hour in American history? NASA's highest-ranking official, James Webb, resigned without explanation just days before the first Apollo mission. Why, when he was on the threshold of achieving the greatest accomplishment of his career? All 3 Apollo 11 astronauts also resigned shortly after their return. On the 25th anniversary of the event, in 1994, Neil Armstrong made a rare public appearance and held back tears as he spoke these brief cryptic remarks before the next generation of taxpayers as they toured the White House.
Today we have with us a group of students among America's best. To you we say, we have only completed a beginning. We leave you, that is, undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
Now, as you can see, the whole thing is a hoax. You know, they basically, they faked it. They put the camera back in the cabin and shot a picture of the planet, through the window. But now another thing you have to realize is, remember, the other side, they blocked out the sun. So this is more proof that, there is no dome, because we know the sun was there behind them and they had to block it out so it wouldn't light the cabin. But this is proof positive there is no dome, and that the sun is in fact outside of the planet and not with us under a dome. So, we can kill the whole dome story. But you can see how far they are willing to go to scam us. We couldn't get there in 1969. Now, I personally believe now, later they developed the technology to get there. I believe they developed the technology enough for, crafts to get there, but not human life, not people. They could send a camera out there or a satellite, but they couldn't send, living people out there, through the radiation, of course, because nobody would be able to survive it. So what you should realize is that video explains the black background. Whenever we see the shots of the Earth, that's supposed to be from NASA, supposed to be from live shots, and, from what they describe as a composite of the Earth, it explains the black background. Now, we know why it's black, because they put the insert there, and the blackness that we're seeing is not space. It was just the inside of a cabin. But what you have to realize is this: no matter if they develop the technology to go further in space, actual human beings, no matter if the Earth is round, if it's flat, if it's square, or what have you, they can only ever show us that shot. They can only ever show us the shots with the black background. They can only show us these shots that look like, what we seen from the Apollo 11 mission. Because if they show us anything different, then everybody is going to know in 1969 that NASA scammed the world out of billions of dollars when they faked the moon landing. Everybody is going to know. So they got to use this shot. They got to use the black background. They can't show us nothing else, because we're going to say, well, it's not in that 1969 photo of NASA. If you ask anybody to show you a picture, an official picture from NASA of the Earth, it's always that shot with the black background. Any other pictures we see is usually of a closer shot of Earth, where they try to show you, the continents or Africa or clouds and stuff like that. Some kind of cloud cover. And that's usually CGI or computer animated or generated, footage, and they admit that. But any official shot that is supposed to be of the planet has always had the black background, and now you know why. Now understand, they are not showing us the true picture of Earth because of, the moon landing, or because it's a dome, or the Earth is flat, or what have you. They're not showing us the true picture of Earth because the Earth is bigger than we know. It's bigger. Now, the whole thing is, this has been proven that it's more land out there. It's more land in the north, and it's more land in the south. And the whole thing is, they have been covering this up for years. Now, this whole thing brings me to Admiral Byrd. And this is what led me to the whole flat earth theory and flat earthers about, 8 years ago. When I started studying the exploration of Admiral Byrd. Now, Admiral Byrd has explored so many different parts of the world, for decades. He mapped out the North Pole. He mapped out different parts of the world. He has flown all across the earth, not just for America, but for other countries as well. Now, he is most known for his exploration of Antarctica. And when he went to Antarctica, he discovered that Antarctica was rich in natural resources. He said it's enough coal there to basically supply the whole world, for years. It's enough minerals there. There might be oil there. And it was about 7 countries involved in this whole exploration, in 1956. Now, he went out there, they were studying, they was researching the whole thing. I believe it was 1956 was his last trip out there, or 1959 was his last trip out to the Antarctic to explore it and to excavate the whole thing. And they took a whole ship of soldiers out there for whatever reason. He took a ship that had about 1,400 soldiers on it, and he went to Antarctica for whatever. We're never going to know what the purpose of the troops were, or what was going on and what was taking place there. But they felt like they needed protection, and they needed over 1,000 soldiers, and they went out there. But this is what you have to understand. Not only did he go out there and he explained that, Antarctica was, resource rich. It was huge, and it wasn't all completely frozen. It was parts of Antarctica that was thawed out, that was green. But on top of all of that, there was also another continent deeper into the interior of Antarctica, further out. This continent was the size of America, and nobody has ever stepped foot on that continent. He came on TV and he expressed all of these things to the public, and he put all this information out there. Now, take a look.
Well, Admiral, do you hope to see that?
I do.
Well, Admiral,
Yeah.
would you say that since you've been to both the extremities of Earth, are these expeditions to such far-off places, are they getting easier because of modern techniques, or is danger still close at hand?
Well, it's a little risky, but nothing like it used to be with the old slow planes and the small cruising radius where we had to put down bases. We replaced the dog teams, and of course that was a big improvement. But now the planes go much faster, and they are safer, and they have a much bigger cruising radius. You haven't got the danger of a terribly heavy load.
Admiral, an expedition to which I believe you're the advisor is now en route. What is that expedition doing?
Well, that's the icebreaker Atka, and it's a reconnaissance expedition. It's going down to the South Pole area to make certain observations and to look for some bases. They will be back in April, and they will report back, and upon the information we get from that undertaking, we will base the bigger expedition that's to follow.
Is that very definitely planned, or is that...
That is being planned right now. So I'm willing to say to you that there will be a number of expeditions that will follow, I think, year after year, to the bottom of the world, because the government has really become interested.
Well, Admiral Byrd, I can understand, I think everybody can, the interest in the North Pole because it's so near our greatest challenger, Soviet Russia. But why this interest in the bottom of the world? Nobody living down there, is there?
No, it's pretty cold. There's only one permanent resident, that's the emperor penguin. The little ones live further north. I tell you one reason they're interested. It's by far the most valuable, important place left in the world for science. That's why the scientific groups all over the nation are really interested. But more important than that, it has to do with the future of the nation, those to come after us, or even during your lifetime, because it happens to be an untouched reservoir of natural resources. And, as the world shrinks with an ever-increasing acceleration, far-flung places once useless, like we thought the North Pole was, and no man's land, become very useful. The bottom of the world will be important, not only to us, but to our allies.
I was going to ask you, does it have military importance?
It has some, and as the world shrinks, it will continue to shrink with an ever-increasing acceleration, thus bringing these places closer. And in the future, I can see a time when it will be very, very important strategically.
Well, has the development of air power increased the strategic importance of places like the
very much
Palma
so.
Peninsula, was it?
Very much so. Even now, if anything happened and we lost the Panama Canal, we would have to control the islands just north of Antarctica, which are part of Antarctica, then between there and Cape Horn.
I've heard it said that there are 7 continents in the world, and one of them has never been seen by a woman, and that's Antarctica. Is that actually true?
Well, if the Palma Peninsula is an island, as far as I know, that's true. No woman's ever stepped foot upon the Antarctic continent, and it's the most peaceful place in the world.
Well, I'm sure that won't last very long.
Admiral, you speak of the resources of Antarctica. What are they? What are the natural resources there?
Well, we've found enough of coal within 180 miles of the South Pole in a great ridge of mountains. It's not covered with snow, enough to supply the whole world for quite a while.
Well,
that's the coal. Now, there's evidence of many other minerals. We are pretty sure there's oil. Now, that coal shows the bottom of the world. Now, by far the coldest spot in the world. Where that coal is gets 100 below zero in the winter.
well,
It was once tropical. So we think there's oil there, and there's evidence, probably uranium there.
is it any secret? Is there uranium there? That would be the only thing that would be practical to actually go after, I suppose. Everything else would be economically unfeasible, wouldn't it?
Well, as we recklessly expend our resources, the time will come when we'll have to go after that stuff down there.
Well,
you know, I avoided what you said about uranium. I'm not sure about that. I don't want to have the world fighting over the Antarctica.
And Robert, is there a competition among other nations to try to get information about Antarctica and possibly to secure some of these resources?
Well, yes. There are now 7 nations very much interested. Russia is interested tremendously. That I'm sure of. Australia has an expedition down there. The Argentine, the Chile, New Zealand, Britain, and so on. Now, you can understand those people down there being interested because they live down there. The New Zealanders, the Argentinians, the Chileans, and Australians. And so we don't do much about claiming anything.
Admiral, you make this sound a little crowded. Are there that many expeditions now there or en route there?
Well, you know, as I said, it's the most peaceful place in the world, but I don't think it will be for long because of this intense interest on the part of other nations and this nation.
Well, Admiral Byrd, are private expeditions a thing of the past? Is expedition and exploration, making expedition and exploration now purely a government function because of the tremendous cost
No, I
and
don't think
organization?
so. I think down south it may be more or less a thing of the past, but not other expeditions that go there. A lot of them go north now.
This latest expedition now on the way is a government expedition, I take it.
Yes, that's the government.
However, may I ask you, is there a great difference between the top of the world and the bottom of the world?
There is. Now, the North Pole is the center of an ocean 10,000 feet deep. The South Pole, the center of a plateau, 10,000 feet high. The North Polar Sea is surrounded by continents that are slightly frozen. The Antarctic continent is surrounded by a belt of ice, frozen seas of at least 1,200 miles thick. Now, the South is a plateau. It gets, in some places, 14,000 feet up. I've been over areas about 13,000, and it's a little bit chilly up there. So there's that big difference between the top and bottom of the world. The North really isn't very cold up there on the Arctic Ocean.
Now, it was 1956 when Admiral Byrd took his last trip out to Antarctica. Then, right after that, all of the nations got together and they came up with basically a treaty that banned any country from going to Antarctica and exploring into Antarctica. They just dropped the whole thing, forget about the resources, forget about that it might be oil, forget what's there, forget about that whole continent that's the size of America that nobody stepped foot on, forget all of it. We're going to guard it, we're going to put together a treaty, no country goes there and touches anything, no country explores any more of Antarctica, forget it, we're going to basically block it out and, move on. And that's what happened. They basically forgot about it. They said nobody is to go there and dig or do any kind of research. Nobody is to touch Antarctica. And if you try to go there today, it is guarded by the military. Now, you can go, and there's certain parts that you can explore. You can go there. They have little tours and stuff like that. But you can't go deep into the interior of Antarctica. Now, one of the things you have to ask yourself is this. How many people have heard of this? 2, why hasn't our map been modified to reflect the land, that they found in Antarctica? This happened in the 50s. So we wasn't born yet, most of us. And you went to school and you learned about the continents and everything like that. But never did they tell you about Antarctica, what was there, and that there was another continent the size of the United States that's there. Why? Why is that? What did they find? What could they have possibly have found there to make them stop doing everything, turn around, and guard it? And that's something that baffles me and everybody who digs into this whole situation. It's not a theory. It's not conspiracy theory. It's proven. He said it himself. It has been documented. The whole exploration, the whole trip. They don't hide the information on the exploration, but they obviously are hiding that other continent and what's there. We don't know. Now, we fast forward to today. And we look at, not just today, but just, all the wars, all of the fighting that countries have done over oil, over gold, over just land itself. All of this fighting that's taking place today in the Middle East, because of gold, because of oil, because of the price of gold and oil, because of currency. All of this fighting going on. Meanwhile, there is a continent. We have Antarctica that is mineral rich, that is rich in resources. A whole nother continent the size of America that has not been explored. Nobody will touch it yet. They will go to war with another country before they step foot in that area. What's going on? And this is something that, I was baffled by when I was doing my research, and I kept digging into what could it possibly be. And the only thing I can think of is the Earth is much bigger than they are telling us. And not only did they find another continent over there, they probably found, more continents and more space. And the thing is this, like I said before, the Earth can very well be round. But look at it this way. Now, if the Earth is round and it's much bigger than we think it is, there could be areas that are flat. And I know some people won't understand that, but you have to look at it like this. If you take a ball, let's take a look at this. Take a ball and you put a line across it. You see where the line meets and where it touches the curvature. Now, that area is flat. That is a flat area. No matter how you slice it, that area is flat, or else you will be able to see, between it. You will be able to see light, as you can see on the sides there. Because of the curvature, you can see straight through. So that area where the line touches the curvature is flat. Now, the bigger the curve, or the bigger the circle, the more flat land there will be. So if you take the flat Earth model and you shrink it down and you put it in that flat area, so we're talking about all of the continents that we know today, the Earth as we know it. If you take it and you put it in that flat area, it would look flat. It will fit. Everything will fit in that flat surface. But if we could actually go out further, which we can't, you would start to see the curvature of the Earth, because you probably have to go out thousands of miles before you would do it, but we can't do that. But at some point it would curve. But as you can see, if the Earth was larger, then yeah, it would make sense that everything looks flat, because, as far as we can see, everything that we know that is the Earth, all of the continents, everything that's put together can fit in that little flat spot of the curvature where it's flat at. Now, that's a theory, not a proven thing, of course, but like I said, when you start doing the research and you start seeing the pros and cons of flat Earth, you have to come up with an alternative. And that's something that not only myself that I came up with, but I've seen that a few other people have come up with that same idea as well. We don't know what's over there. They do. And you might ask yourself, well, why would they not want us to explore it? Why don't they want us to go over there? And you got to think, with all the countries we know today, it's hard enough for them to control us. Just with the world today, it's hard enough. But if there was enough land, excuse me, if there was more land over there that was bigger than America, or bigger than the world we know it as we know it today, then it will be impossible for them to control us. we would get over there, we would see all that land. It would be enough land for us to set up so many civilizations so far apart, and they would not be able to control us. They would not be able to control what we could do. So rather than risk that, they just said, you know what, block it off. Nobody go there. If we go there, if we tell people about this, we are going to lose control over this area we know today as Earth. So the whole thing is the Earth round? Is it flat? Is it a cube? Is it what have you? Who the fuck cares? That is my answer. Who cares? We got too much to worry about than to, deal with flat Earth. I mean, seriously, we can't even get over black and white. We can't even get over, who's the president, who's going to be president. We can't even get through little teeny stupid ass problems. And, to even deal with the Earth being flat or anything like that. Who cares? It's a waste of time, a waste of, resources. I think we have to gain control over the situation, over this government, over the corruption, over the oppression, over everything else that's going on before we deal with flat Earth. That's something that's way down the line. Because if we actually discovered that the Earth was flat, so what? What can we do about it? It doesn't change anything, left or right. We know religion is bullshit, it's bogus. But no matter what we really dig into, we can't get past little stupid problems to deal with other problems. We got too many other problems to deal with than to tangle with flat Earth. And that's probably one of the reasons why I left it alone years ago, because I was like, it's too many other things to look at, religion and the oppression of, people. So I left it alone. I came to my conclusion, which is, what I just shared with you in this video. That was my conclusion 8 years ago, that the Earth is much bigger. There's more land that they're hiding from us. And probably the reason why they don't want to tell us about it is we would want to go. I mean, can you imagine going over there? And when you start, when we start reading about this land over there, they talk about it being, a tropical oasis and beautiful and, so much. We would want to go. We would want to see it. People would want to set up civilizations there. People would want to be out of the reach of the government. And that's so far, away from everything. And eventually we will explore out and we will find more land and people will be able to just go, set up entire civilizations. Who knows what's over there? Like I said, they could have went there and found a whole another civilization of people living primitively. And rather than wipe them out, kill them all, they probably left them alone. Who knows? It's a lot of theories that I have read. Some people believe that it's dinosaurs over there. Some people believe that, it's aliens over there. Some people believe a lot of different things. But the whole thing is this. The Earth is the way that it is already. We got to deal with that first before we even deal with, flat Earth or whatever the hell is over there. We got to deal with these people first. We got to deal with our situation now. We got to focus on, getting from under the suppression of governments from all over, not just America, but everywhere. They are all in on the same scam. It's the same scam. Control the people. That's what it's about. Putin knows enough to basically wipe out America. He knows enough. He can tell America the truth and we would see it and it'll be enough for us to just, raid the White House. But he can't because he got his own shit too. He got his own problems as well. All of these governments, all of these leaders are scamming the people. That's what you got to realize. Everybody's scamming us. It's all about controlling the people, controlling your land, and fighting for whatever little scraps they can get, taking over other territories. Period, point blank. That's what it's about. So I wanted to do this video to make it clear and to get people to do their own research into flat Earth, if you want to dig into it, research it, Antarctica and the land that they found, the landmass over there. Just research all of this stuff and get that information into your head because it's going to become relevant later on. Now, again, this is something that a lot of people don't touch. A lot of people stay away from flat Earth. I stayed away from it. After 8 years of research, I came to my conclusion. And, that's the end of it for me because, as I said, it's other things to deal with besides that. So hopefully people will take this information and they will, archive it and put it into their records and just understand, what took place. And to definitely do research on Admiral Byrd and a lot that he discovered, not just in Antarctica, but in the North Pole as well, because there's land up there as well. So we got to research this stuff. You need to know it. But as far as getting all obsessed with flat Earth, I mean, that's crazy. Some people out here, they crazy. They ain't got nothing better to do. But this was my video, and I'll see you guys next video. Thanks for watching.